Go.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this month's regular commission meeting. My name is Untitled Richardson. I'm the chair of the Eugene Sustainability Commission, and I'm joined with Laura Allen, our vice chair, and our other amazing commissioners. I now call this meeting to order. And Matt, if you could please read the Zoom housekeeping script.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Mtima. Hi, everyone. Good evening. I'm Matt Rodriguez. I'm the Public Works Director. I'll be the staff support for the meeting tonight. So thank you for joining us in this remote meeting format that enables this commission to meet, hear from the community, and take care of business while keeping its commissioners, staff, and public safe. For those who join the meeting via computer, device, or phone, your microphone, webcam, and phone are automatically muted when you enter the meeting as an attendee. Commissioners, as panelists, you are able to mute or unmute your video and mic at your discretion, though we ask that you please mute yourself when you're not speaking to avoid any feedback or background noise. If you wish to participate during the public comment portion of the meeting and haven't already done so, please raise your virtual hand now to join the speaker's queue in one of two ways. For those viewing the meeting on a computer, laptop, or other device, click once on the blue hand icon. For those listening to the meeting on a phone, press *9. I will lower hands as speakers are called upon. When the public comment begins, Chair Mtima Richardson will announce the next two speakers. When it's your turn, Mtima will announce your name and will unmute your microphone, and I will unmute your microphone. You'll have 2 minutes to speak, after which I will again mute your microphone. Regarding the chat and Q&A functionality of Zoom, please note that the attendees will not be able to use these features. Commissioners, we ask that you do not utilize the chat function for any purpose other than technological assistance, as attendees will not have access to these conversations. Lastly, in accordance with the recently passed HB 4212, this meeting will be recorded. Recordings will be posted to the Sustainability Commission website after each meeting. I want to thank everyone for their patience, flexibility, and good humor as we work within this virtual meeting format. As always, feel free to contact the Sustainability Commission if there is testimony you are not able to provide or wish to get to us in a different manner. Mtima, back over to you.
Thank you, Matt. Do we now have a discussion or motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So motion to approve. Second.
Okay, so that was Jan and then Laura second.
Stay.
Oh.
I'm coming back down. You stay there. Stay.
All in favor, please raise your hand.
Oh.
And Mike, I can't see your, oh, thank you. Okay. So it passes, thank you. And so for today's icebreaker, I thought it'd be fun since tomorrow is all about the color green. It would be fun if we went around and just said what our favorite color was, and maybe if you have the reason why it's your favorite color. And so I'll start off, and then once you're done speaking, you can just call on the next person and then they can talk. And I see Louisa just sent in the chat that she needs to be upgraded to a panelist. So my favorite color is blue. I think it's mine because it's just such a pretty color, like, even if it's in the sky or in the ocean. And then it always just makes me want to have like a smoothie or just something tasty to drink. Because I'm kind of a foodie, so it goes with it. The next person I'll call on is Hannah.
My favorite color is purple. I don't really know why. It's just always been my favorite color. It's the color of my room growing up, so just really like it. Yeah, I would choose Laura.
Right now, my favorite color is green because everything is growing outside and I'm so excited that it's spring. And I will pick Karen.
My favorite color is green because it reminds me of nature, which is very healing and calming. and vital to our existence. So thank you.
Did you want to call on someone?
Sure. I will call on Mike.
My favorite color is, I wish it was something different than all of you, but it's blue. And I've always grown up within eye contact with the ocean or water. I've just been very fortunate that way. And it's sort of, it's a color that calms me. It's a color that I want to surround myself with, and it kind of just brings me down to, it's a very grounding, like earthy color for me. Louisa, what's your favorite color?
I'm an orange person myself. I like kind of like that sunset, you know, anything from like a creamsicle to like a burnt, that whole range I really appreciate. How about you, Counselor Semple?
I'm going to join the crowd and say green. Although until I was like in my late 20s, it was blue. I was different then. But green is the color of life and energy and chlorophyll, and it's what's keeping us all going. And it's beautiful. And also, I am a slug queen, and our official color is green. And I have to pick somebody. Jan, have you gone yet?
Well, I'm going to say I really love blues and greens, almost all of them, you know, and so so teal actually is one of my favorite colors. It's kind of in between, but I like them all. Mitra.
I've really been feeling the color ochre lately, which is that kind of orangey yellow, kind of a color of a marigold. I just really, I don't know, it's bright and happy, and some beautiful flowers, insects, animals have that color. It's a great color. Who hasn't gone? Was I the last one?
I think you were, unless Matt wanted to join in.
Matt, what's your favorite color?
I'm another blue person. You probably can't see all the colors. I end up finding myself in blue. So yes, that's mine. Thank you for asking.
Thank you everyone for sharing. I love this. I love getting to know you all. I know, at least for me, it can be a little intimidating, especially with the recordings. Like, okay, I'm sharing a little part of myself, but thank you. And now I'd like to move on to our land acknowledgement and give a moment. I'd like to say the City of Eugene Sustainability Commission would like to acknowledge and extend our respects to the traditional homelands of the Kalapuya peoples of the Willamette Valley. And then I'd just like to give maybe like 10 seconds of just a moment of silence for the Kalapuya people. Thank you, everyone. I think it's very important to at least give a little bit of our time to recognize that. So thank you for allowing us to continue on. And to finish up our housekeeping, do we have a discussion or motion to approve January's minutes? Or not January's, February's minutes?
I motion to approve February's minutes.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mitra and Karen. All in favor, please raise your hand.
It looks like Art is also stuck as an attendee. Thanks.
Thanks, Lisa. I'll give a moment to see. Oh, there he is.
Thanks, Louisa.
Hey, Art. So we're
Hey.
just voting to see to approve February's meeting minutes. And so I didn't get a chance to see if you raised your hand or not. Perfect. So it passes. Thank you. And now we will go ahead and move to the public comment section. And just as a reminder, we'll call on those who have raised their hands to provide the public comment. And we'll call on each speaker in the order their hands were raised, and staff will mute and unmute you when it's your turn. And please remember you'll have 2 minutes to speak, and I'll give a reminder at 1. So I believe I saw Ralph's McDonald's hand first.
Hello, commissioners. Is the sound working? Good. Well, thank you for allowing me in public comment. I recognize some of the commissioners because I myself was a sustainability commissioner 2016 to 2020. So some of you are still working at sustainability for Eugene, and some of you are new, and that's great. I won't take up much of your time this evening, but one of my other hats is chair of a neighborhood association here in Eugene, and also a river runner, kayaker. And I've been asked about some of the, we'll call them the color green, since some of you have a favorite color of green, and along the Kalapuya Trail of the Willamette River in connection with the Willamette Greenway development, which the city recently offers 22 million in MUPTI tax savings for that. So what I would like is, I would like some help getting the citizen involvement program. It's a document under State of Oregon Land Use Planning Goal 1. And I had help from Sadie Carney at the state level, but she hasn't been able to locate the plan. So I'm hoping that through the commission and perhaps Councilor Semple, the location of the plan, either in the comprehensive plan or as a standalone document, can be located so we can look at the green provisions that accompany the Willamette Greenway development and commercial and residential development along the Willamette River. Thank you very much. That's the extent of my comment.
Thank you, Ralph. I see 350 Eugene has a hand up.
Yes, good evening, commissioners. My name is Patty Hine. I live out in the county, and I just wanted to express my appreciation for the really good work that the Sustainability Commission has been doing, in particular, the Electrification Subcommittee. I think that's going to be really key for getting those motions that were passed in November over the finish line, with ordinance language coming up to electrify our buildings in Eugene starting 2023 January. Also want to thank you for considering the grant request that 350 Eugene has put into your commission in order to support a town hall that we're having on April 24th coming up. It's going to be about electrifying Eugene and how we can reduce our emissions quickly that way in buildings and transportation. So just here to thank you very much for your work. And I know you're working hard off screen as well as on screen. Thank you.
Okay, I'll open it now up to commissioners for a response. And I see Laura's hands up.
Thank you both for coming. Patty, and maybe someone else knows, was that request, did we decide on that request, or was that a pending request?
We had decided on the request previously, but the date has been postponed. And so it's now going to hopefully actually truly occur on April 24th. And I thought that there had been an application resubmitted, but I haven't seen it yet. We didn't see it in our packet this time, and I'm not sure if it got hung up somewhere.
So Jan, do we need to do anything tonight about it, or is we already did decide on the funding?
I think it might be good if we're looking at the other one later, if we just kind of reaffirm that we want to approve it, even, you know, with the date, the change date. I don't know if there were other things about the application that had changed. It says we did resubmit it, haven't seen it, so it must have gotten kind of hung up somewhere. I'll have to look into it. It was approved before, so I think we should be okay with. I don't think it was significantly changed in any way, just the date.
Thanks, Jan, for that clarification. We'll go ahead with Karen.
I see the request in our packet of information. There's one for the green home tour and there's also one for 350. So I don't know if that's part of our agenda. I'm looking, but it seems like we're going to be addressing that tonight at some point. Because it says here, Commissioner updates request for support for green home tour, but Ann brought up the fact that we had approved that other one, and so we should discuss it as well. It's in our packet. Anyway, 2 cents. Thank you.
I believe the home tour was something Laura was going to bring up. Louisa, I see your hand.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Ralph and Patty for coming tonight. Ralph, what I heard you express the need to locate is the citizen involvement plan specifically for the riverfront development project in the Greenway. Is that the right framing? I just wanted to make sure we made note of exactly what we're trying to locate. Maybe you could respond in the chat if we can't get you back.
Can I?
We can hear you.
You can hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, the nomenclature evidently is important. And what we're looking for is the citizen involvement program. It would be the umbrella, the local jurisdiction of Eugene for the state goal 1 of land use planning. And it would be an umbrella document. As far as we know, there isn't a citizen involvement plan for the Willamette Greenway. But the umbrella document would specify what the city needs to do, and that's called the Citizen Involvement Program. And the state mandates that local jurisdictions have those.
Thanks for the clarification.
Hey, Karen, see your hands up.
So what can we do to help out with this situation with the riverfront? What can we do? Are we able to write a letter? Do we need to request a document? How can we support Ralph in this issue? Or 350, or how can we be supportive on this?
Oh, hey, Matt, you have a response for that?
Yeah, well, I'll try my best. So I think Ralph is talking about the potential code changes to the Willamette Greenway, not a particular project, but the code changes, if I'm following him correctly. And we do have a work session coming up that I was going to identify during the staff updates on the Willamette Greenway on April 18th, or I'm sorry, actually it's before then, it's on April 11th, and then there's a public hearing on April 18th. So the commission could, of course, provide testimony for the public hearing or choose to speak at the public hearing.
And so what it sounds like Ralph is asking is if we can assist in identifying the citizen involvement program that the city has in effect that would relate to that. Does that sound like you're understanding, Matt, of what he was asking for?
I don't know that I'm 100% sure. I don't want to misrepresent, and Ralph can raise his hand if I'm not, but I think it was a request to understand the citizen involvement plan and maybe ask for additional public input pathways to the citizen involvement plan.
You see Ralph raise his hand again, so he might have a little more input.
It's just a document. I'm told that it's a document called the Citizen Involvement Program. And it's a document that is probably in the city's coffers or code somewhere, but it's not, we haven't found it on the website. So it's the Citizen Involvement Program document that relates to Goal 1, the citizen involvement of the state of Oregon land use planning law, that local jurisdictions must have a citizen involvement program. And Eugene probably has one. That's all we're looking for. Just a document.
I think the planning commission does that. They have written in a report I read that as the citizen involvement, whatever of Eugene. So you might want to check that.
Just giving another moment to see if anyone else has anything to add. Hey, Karen, see your hand.
Okay, hey, Ralph, does that address the issue you brought up to us? Is there anything else you see how we can assist in this process, or you're just in the investigation stage?
Well, we can talk about it offline, Karen. I have your email. So I thank you for, it's just talking to the right person to find the document. Thank you.
Thanks for your work, Ralph.
Yeah, thank you everyone for your comments and contributions. I really appreciate you all being here and paying attention to the work that we're doing. Next off, we have some guests here from Good Company. They will be providing us a review of the decarbonization of existing buildings study. And so I'll just go ahead and kick it off to them if they want to give us a little more introduction of who they are and start off with what they have.
Thank you. This is Josh Proudfoot speaking from Good Company. Just one logistical note, Aaron has a little bit of a PowerPoint to share that I'd like to narrate. Can you give him access to be able to? There we go. All right.
Give me one sec, Josh.
Okay. Well, let me just say howdy to the counselors, the commissioners, coworkers, friends, neighbors. Happy to see everybody tonight. We're basically here to get input from all of you to make sure that a piece of work we're doing for the city of Eugene includes your thinking and your interests. So that's what we're here to briefly present and then listen about. Aaron, next slide, please. Okay, so what we're charged to do is find the best practices for building decarbonization for existing buildings. Let me just be clear, existing, not future ones that can be done perfect, existing. Find those best practices, find out who's doing what in the local area, find out if there are any gaps, and see what the city might do to fill in some of those gaps. We're charged to look at residential, commercial, and industrial energy. We're on a very fast time frame for this study because of the council request. And we will be finishing with our research and analysis towards the end of April, and then May and June, probably more analysis and more writing. Next slide, please. Okay, so how are we going to go about this? This is the highest of the high level. We're going to characterize the existing building stock in Eugene. This sounds like an easy task. It's already a challenge, but we're getting there. Meaning, how many of what houses of what types with what energy systems from what rough decade do we have? Same thing with commercial, same thing with multifamily, and same thing with industrial. The data is coming from all over the place, but trying to get a handle on what we have is really important. We do have good baselines for greenhouse gases already from our previous work. Okay, then go out, do all the research on best practices for retrofitting existing buildings at a large scale. Make sure that we focus first and foremost on equity and serving low income. Look for ways people got around existing regulations that might be in the way, and see how we might phase that in. Part of what we're doing here, I would guess, has some precedent, and some of it might be unfolding as we speak now. So it'll be curious to see how that goes. The local program providers, these are all the folks that do energy efficiency, weatherization, the utilities, ETO, EWEB, et cetera, low-income housing groups, and folks like Homes for Good, et cetera. See what their service offerings are and see if there's a gap between what they are offering and doing, and again, what the best practice is. Then look at the city's roles and charters and say what might be a good fit for the city that could fill those gaps that we find. That would result in before and after estimates for cost, for greenhouse gases, and for policies. Next slide, please. Okay, that's all the table setting we're doing, or context setting. Mostly we are here just to ask what your interests are and what you'd want to make sure that we look out for in our research and our thinking on this. And this can be kind of round robin. Chair, I don't know if you want to manage the conversation or if you just want to let it kind of happen, but we defer to you.
Yeah, I'll just open it up to any commissioners who have any suggestions or comments. I see Laura's hands up.
Thank you for sharing that. And it's really exciting that this work is happening. I was wondering if you've connected with like other networks, like the NEOS network and other, who's a network of officials across the United States working on decarbonization in different ways. And I know there's a lot of resources available through these networks.
Short answer is we're going every place we can find where there's good info. So if you could put in the chat the name of that group that you mentioned, we'll absolutely chase it down and network from there. Somebody else must. Oh, there we go.
I see Art, and then I'll put Louisa on cue.
Why not? We'll keep it going, right? But I'm no expert, but I've been intrigued by this decarbonization project that Ithaca, New York is doing. I don't know if you've seen that, and how they are getting private financing to pay for it as a form of investing opportunity for people. And there's this company, Block Power. I think they're out of Brooklyn or whatever, that's kind of, I've seen a couple articles just recently. I saw another article about them they help that process. They find investors and things like that. So I think that you should look in at least to financing this, not just stopping with here are the costs, but give the city some opportunity, ideas of how to finance that. Maybe you were going to, but I'm just throwing that in there. Thank you.
That's great. We are actually going to look at that, but I always want to know about companies that are pushing on that, because those new models they've been thought about a lot, but that doesn't mean they've been deployed. So we'll look at Ithaca and Block Power. And I'll call my friend in Ithaca and see if he knows anybody that we could talk to. All right.
I'll go ahead. I was just curious about the framing of decarbonization and how it might overlap with other non-traditional home heating sources. Well, I guess more traditional home heating sources like wood. It's not directly the same thing, but I was just curious if you could speak to, as it's been a topic of our air quality work for the last couple of years, even trying to catalog the number of stoves in the city is something we've been really interested to do. And I was wondering if this study might be able to do that. Thanks.
I think we're looking at wood. It's kind of It's kind of curious though, if you view that as, I mean, we know we have air quality concerns, but whether you view that as something that needs to be changed, that's the pre or the post transition. If you talk to the Green Heat Alliance, they would argue strongly that they're a low GHG option. I know a lot of people feel differently about biological fuels or living fuels, etc. But it's something actually I hadn't thought about in framing it. Is there a specific angle on it you're thinking about?
I guess I was curious, you were kind of looking at all sources, and I was wondering if in the identification of, the sectors that had natural gas, or in looking through RLID and other databases that can catalog some of these home heating sources, if that might be a nugget of data that might come out as well. And how the city is thinking about wood heat. You mentioned that it's sometimes thought of as a low GHG option. Sometimes it's a resilience conversation around if we're going all electric with home heating, that, so I guess those points all come up for me when I'm thinking about decarbonization of home heating and the impacts, pro and con, for wood heat in our community.
I think I would add it to the list. That's probably the best answer. I will say on that resiliency front, if you're thinking about earthquakes, I don't know any other way to heat after a big earthquake when the infrastructure is down for so long. So resilience is a little different than decarbonization, but boy, oh boy, it's on my mind. So we'll add that. Thank you, Louisa.
Mike, I see your hands up.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for coming to speak with us. I was just listening to your scope of work and got a little like stressed out, just literally thinking about what I think you said. So I wanted to clarify that your work includes residential, commercial buildings, and the cost to conversion to electrical work. Is that correct?
No, it's not just electrifying, it's decarbonizing. So we have to look at both energy sourcing and on-site stuff.
Okay. So I don't want to, I'm sure this is going to be a big reveal and everybody's really waiting to hear what's going to come out, but can you give us a little preview of what you're finding out right now?
I can tell you that basically we're trying to characterize what we already have. We have data in forms of greenhouse gases aggregate in great shape, but it's really hard to kind of see the building stock by decade, make assumptions about what kinds of appliances are in there, have they been upgraded, etc. So that's where we're at. We've also got parallel tracks on the best practices that are concurrent, but I'd say there's nothing kind of digestible to hand you yet. We're just mostly in a massive gathering phase.
Great. Well, I commend you for your work. Literally, I think when we think about these things that we aspire to do with our climate goals, etc., it boils down to numbers, and it boils down to should we want to do that, can we afford to do that, or really when it comes down to actually does it make sense to do that. And I'm glad you're on the program. I'm really looking forward to hearing a little bit more about just the base data on this idea, and I'm glad somebody's doing it, because I think it'll make us all feel better.
Thank you. I know I want to know the answers too. We know a lot of the strategies, but getting into this before should become that after, that's it's going to be tough, especially with different like building years and building types, And of course, the split incentives with a landlord versus an ownership situation. There's a lot of complexity there.
Bless you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jan, and then Louisa can be next.
Oh, sorry about that. Okay, so you actually just kind of answered my question a minute ago. Also, thanks for being here, and we're very excited about this work. I was going to ask, kind of just to clarify that when you talk about costs and best practices, you're talking about where you find or would recommend incentives or other kinds of programs, how we might actually go about this. And it sounds like you are.
Financing is definitely a major part of what we're looking at. You know, the costs are always a tough thing, just because a lot of the technologies are moving really quick and they're growing and they're getting deployed more, and some of those costs are changing. But we're looking at not just the cost, but also, is there a way to finance it neatly or comfortably? And then also kind of rough costs of transition where we can calculate those for different types of buildings and different types of widgets. But again, we're on a super tight timeline, and we have to, on some level, embrace a higher level, because just getting into the specificity of each and every house and what is the true cost of, you know, converting, I don't know, a furnace to a heat pump, and did you have to upgrade the panel? Did you have to trench from the street for the electrical line? That kind of detail we won't have in there. It's definitely in aggregate, but we should be in ballpark scale.
Thank
you. I realized it might be helpful to have a clarifying question, which is, under what circumstances is decarbonization not directly electrification?
Good question. So one of the things we're going to do is look at power sourcing. And if you're looking at speed, power sourcing, if you can get that power generation source or scaled up, that might be the fastest way to go from the boundaries of what we're looking at. I think electrification is probably the fastest path. I think there are other paths that are going to go a little bit slower. I also know that with the rise of renewable diesel, there's a huge byproduct of renewable propane that's very low carbon. I'm not suggesting that that's end game, but when we're looking at transitions and we're looking at different kinds of housing types, I think that'll show up. But it does beg that question. So we're going to look at that, at the fuel, and then at the individual building level. And I think in gross terms, people know the answer of that. But in the how does that go down, I think there might be more detail to it. Great question, though. It's the one that's we're all struggling with or trying to make happen.
Hey, Laura.
When you were talking about, you know, these aggregate costs for the transition, are you imagining that this is end of use or end of lifetime of these appliances? Like when the gas furnace goes out, then it's electrified for the cost. So you're looking at difference in cost, new gas furnace versus new electric heat pump? Or are you considering people just switching out functional appliances?
I think the answer would be, the assumption would be that every time there's a new appliance going in, and we don't even address the fact about whether they've exploited the full life of whatever device they have, we just say at some moment, everybody needs to switch, right? And so when they switch is not exactly the question. It's more how they switch and what they switch to and what's the cost of that switch. It's certainly on my mind as an individual. that lives in a house, when to make the switch, and do you wait for something to fail, or do you go early and invest early? But I think in our study, we have to assume that it's just going to be time to switch. So I think we're not dealing with that question per se. I think what we would look at is wherever possible, what is kind of net cost. But again, I want to see what kind of data we get before we can promise the results.
Just to clarify real quick, you're talking about net difference, like, because it's the whole cost is not the entire price tag, because they would have had to buy something. So it's the difference in cost. That's what you're talking about.
We will have to define what that cost is, right? If they're going to be replacing something anyway, then it's a different question of their furnace or whatever would last forever, but we're going to switch. So I think that's a reasonable, careful thing to point out is what is that cost? And is that the incremental cost, or is that the full switch? It might end up cheaper than replacing what's there. We don't know yet.
I see Dennis was first, and then we can move to Counselor Simple.
Yeah, I've been doing some, small surveys with local HVAC companies, and asking kind of trends they're seeing, and they're seeing a lot of dual fuel systems. Either people are switching to dual fuel systems, or they're selling heat pumps to people who are keeping their furnace in place and doing a ductless system as a cooling system, and a system that they can use when the temperature is moderate to provide adequate heat, but they're still leaving the furnace in place for when it gets colder. Are you looking at any percentage of potential dual fuel systems, which would dramatically reduce the use of fossil fuels if they're only used for a very short period of time? And another related one, when I was director of Moss Street Children's Center at the university, we had ground source heat pumps, floor heating with a boiler backup. Again, only used in the coldest times. So a different version of a dual fuel system.
Yeah, so I think we're going to see that more in commercial. My experience, and this is something that we will have to talk about, but it's a really thoughtful question is, do you just add the heat pump and hold on to the gas furnace? The heat pump that I got goes down to what, something like -5. So I don't see the occasion where I need to boost it with gas. And then from a resilience standpoint, if you lose power, you lose your ability to ignite it and blow it. So that's a great question. I think we're going to have to torture ourselves a little bit about that. But I know the cost would be the same because you still have to add it. It's just a question of, I think we would assume you use it in all scenarios. But I know this is kind of the question at the Y too. I think with a heat pump, they can get away with most of the heating of the water, but on the coldest of the coldest days, what do they need to do? And if we're just looking at an incremental load, maybe that's the way to kind of dodge the transition bullet. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm wondering about the cost of all of this. I live in a house that's almost 100 years old, and my furnace died in December. So of course, when I called up my furnace people, I said, sustainability, I've got to get rid of this gas thing and put electric back in. And there was no way I could afford it. It wasn't a simple thing of just take out this box and put in that box. It was going to require a new circuit board and wiring and digging and changing things in my house. So much that I never even asked for some kind of sum, because I could tell that the $7,000 I paid to get the same furnace I already had, which worked for 15 years, there was just no way I would be able to afford it. So the idea that sometime I would have to change means I would have to move. So that's frightening. And I wonder what your thoughts are about.
Creative financing is what we got to look at, and where the public support is going, right? One of the things that I saw the PUC did is they split the rate structure so that we can protect, anybody that can't afford that transition to the greener future. And it's not that I think on an operating cost is such a big deal. I think it's the actual first cost or getting into that new widget. I think that's to be found in what we dig up for best practices for financing. But I also know, just think about this, here's a person who's worked on climate his entire career other than my earliest days, and it's been a major priority for me. And it was just this year that we got our heat pump. And it's because of the cost, and it's bit by bit by bit by bit. And where we can, we make the switch, and where we can't, we don't yet. So I think there'll be something in there. I think there's also going to be something on offsets bundled with gas, because if you can't switch from gas, that's part of your way that to get to a decarbonized answer. I think that's part of what's on the table.
I just wonder, getting out in front of it, because I feel angry, what if I have to switch to electricity and I have to move out of my house? If other people have had that thought process, they might give a lot of pushback to and I'm for, changing to electricity. I'm on board. But I know it's easier to get things done when a lot more people are on board. And how would I soothe people like me to that there would be a way that I could change to electricity that really wouldn't cost me very much more than replacing my furnace? And then what's it going to be? Underground furnace delivery,
I would say it's a challenge for anybody trying to retrofit their house for especially a 100-year house. My word. I just think that's a universal challenge that our study is supposed to address. So I hear you, and hopefully we find some good answers.
Well, luckily I just bought that furnace, so I've got 15 years.
Mitra, I see your hands up.
I was wondering, when you're talking about the cost of things, there's some new federal tax incentives for high efficiency wood and pellet stoves, like 26%. And I'm wondering if it might be a good incremental plan to get people there to boost the a more of a local tax incentive for something like that already has some money towards it, for some of these more inaccessible units or the older houses that have wood and pellet stoves, which there are a lot of in our area. Or if there's a plan for now, because you're going to run into people needing to replace a unit, and if they can't afford it, they're just going to do what Emily did, or Counselor Simple. It's I'm going to just have to buy the same thing over again. But if there's a segue plan, this isn't the perfect thing, but a dual fuel or a high efficiency wood stove or something until the technology becomes more affordable, or until we get a better financing situation sorted out. Because we're in this no person's land right now, where there's the technology and costs aren't down. The technology is moving so fast, but we're getting to the point where there are people that are very motivated to make these changes, but it's just an all or nothing thing. So I'm wondering if you would be considering some plans that might be considered of people in between, or situations in between, or short term.
Sorry, I have to do that at least once. Start talking with the mic off. I'd have to say we're going to have to look at short-term transition, right? Because if you're really talking short-term and you're just talking carbon, then that's buying renewable power through your utility or buying offset gas. Like that's immediate. And it has an incremental operating cost every month. You're going to be paying a little bit more, at least on your gas bill. You know, eWeb's very low carbon just as is. You don't necessarily have to go out and buy an additional green power package. I think that's the difference. Is there some places where you can't make that capital transition, and if you can source better, I think that's where you do it. I think that is the interim thing, but let us go find out what's out there. You know, we don't want to limit this study to our own imagination or even your ideas. We just want to make sure that we can see as widely as possible. But the kind of near-term transition, I mean, essentially between now and 2050, where if, you know, we're saying we want to get to 0 per Paris Accord 1.5 degree goal. I know the city has a more aggressive goal, but if we're going to go with that, we can't wait till 2050 to start making it happen, right? And there's 2 furnace or appliance life cycles in the time between now and 2050. So everybody's going to have to buy 2 heaters or 2 coolers in that time frame if they own. If not, maybe that's dealt with, you know, with building codes or rental codes. I don't know. But near term, there is always something to do, and that's source for power more green. And that is probably the cheapest, near term, fastest answer. But in terms of small or incremental changes, that's something we'll look at for sure. I can tell you that the biggest greenhouse gas load is generally air heating, then water heating, and then everything else gets a lot smaller, whether that's the stovetop or the dryer or whatever. It's just, the bulk is like 60% is in heat, and then about another 25 to 30 in hot water. So that's really where we're trying to intervene. The other stuff right now is kind of, I mean, it's real, but it's kind of decimal dust when we're saying how fast can we get everybody to change. It may be the first place people connect. Maybe their stove poops out and they say, I'm gonna buy an electric stove instead of a gas one this time. But from a macro cycle, we got basically 2 major appliance turnovers between now and when we need to be at 0. So that's kind of what's shaping our thinking. That's a quick answer, but let us see what we find.
Thank you, everyone. I just wanted to point out that it is 6:25, and so this segment is over unless there's any more. There's something that one of the commissioners want to say. If not, thank you for your time, good company. It was very nice speaking with you all and sharing about this report.
Thank you, everybody, for your service. It's important that we all work on it. Needless to say, everybody knows that, but thank you. All right, take care, everybody.
Okay, so now we'll move towards the staff updates, and Matt has some updates for hiring the manager, the sustainability manager, and the process for it. So I'll go ahead and pass that on.
Thank you. Yeah, so you may remember that our first application review will be this Friday. So we're excited to see how many applicants we get and whether we have enough folks to go ahead and start a round of interviewing. We have extended invitations to Chair Matima and Vice Chair Laura to be part of the interview process. In talking with them, we did want to know if they are unavailable for any reason, if there are other folks on the commission that might be interested. If you have just an interest in us reaching out, if that comes to pass, maybe you could just show your hands. Okay, Louisa, Dennis, Mike, Jan. That is great. Thank you for that. So I think, you know, with spring break and coming up, we would expect if we do have a big enough pool to go ahead and interview, that it'd probably be the week after spring break or potentially the week after that. But we do want to go to the first round of interviews as quickly as we can. That one would likely be remote, and then we would have a second round of interviews that would be more in depth for candidates that are moving forward. So we realize that it's important to get that position hired, but we also want to make sure that we're getting you know, the quality of candidate I think we all want to have to support this work. A couple other just very quick updates. I know we're a little behind schedule, but there seems to, you know, there's interest in the council schedule. Let's see, today we had a renter protection follow-up. On the 11th, there are work sessions on middle housing in the Willamette River Greenway, which is what Ralph was speaking to. April 13th is the building electrification work session, and that is on new buildings. So it's not related to the study that Josh and Aaron are working on, although I actually think that that conversation will be influenced by their work, because they're going to be able to discover emerging technologies that could be used for new construction at the same time they're thinking about how to retrofit buildings. So we're excited about their work influencing that. Looking out a little bit further, April 20th, there's a work session on use of electric micromobility devices in the Willamette Natural area. That's a work session. And then the last one, maybe this isn't on the books yet. I believe, well, I'll get back to you, but I believe in mid to late April, we'll be having a work session on the potential renewal of the transportation bond, and work that staff are doing to get feedback on that bond to potentially align that a little bit better with CAP 2.0, Vision Zero, and our transportation system plan. And they are hoping to come and talk to you to gather your feedback at the next commission meeting. I'll turn it back over to you, Chair.
Just want to open that up to see if anyone had any questions or comments. Dennis and Louisa.
Yeah, I've heard from some in the advocate community that some of the information, or at least concepts that staff are looking at in terms of reporting to the council on new building electrification issues are in discussion with advocates in the community of what staff's pondering. Is there any possibility we might, as commissioners asked to advise council, have any information about those ponderings, or do we find out what's being pondered at the same time it's reported to the council?
Thanks, Dennis. My understanding, and I'll check back in with the staff that are going to lead that conversation at Building Permit Services, but the next conversation is really about what's legally possible. So how would we do it if that was a choice? We're not expecting action at the next work session. For instance, there's some complications with state building code because we're not allowed to modify that. So if we were to require electric only in new buildings, we have to think about where we have our legal levers to be able to do that. So that'll likely be the focus of the next conversation with council.
Thanks, Matt. My question is actually really brief. When you mentioned the transportation bond measure to align with the CAP and the TSP, who would actually be coming to talk to the commission? The staff who are working on the bond measure, or the staff who are writing the realignment? I know that sometimes those are two different.
It's the staff from transportation planning and our capital project teams that basically put together the information that they present to council for their consideration. We also, in addition to gathering feedback, we'll be doing some polling to explore what folks are, statistically valid, polling to see what people may be willing to support in the community.
Thanks, Matt, for all those updates. Moving forward towards the committee updates, we have two letters that could possibly get sent to council tonight after we vote on it. So first up, I'll be EV and gas station. And Art, if I can pass that off to you.
Yeah, that sounds fine. I'll speak, and Mitra or Jan or Laura or Karen, who participated in the committee, can make a comment. This is a relatively straightforward letter, I believe. What kind of triggered the creation of the committee was a recent approval of a siting of a new gas station in town, which seems to be counter to our goals of decreasing dependence on carbon fueled vehicles. And so, you know, the only analysis in some sense to support this request for a ban on further siting, temporary or permanent ban on further siting of gas stations, was really just to look at what's the current situation, where are the gas stations in town, and what do we have. And the map pulled off my Google search for gas stations in Eugene shows that there, you know, a little over 20 gas stations in town or immediately adjacent to town. And I would say almost every home is within 2 miles. Didn't quite do that analysis, but I mean, I think we're a very drivable, accessible to gas community, and I think we could move forward with this without negative impacts. And you know, the next step is to look about how do we obviously increase the other side of that energy that we're wanting, accessibility. I mean, in terms of electric charging stations, but this would be the one step to just slow down on new sightings. So, anything other from the committee, or we just turn over to the questions? Okay.
All right, I see Councilor Simple's hand first and then Karen.
Thank you, and thank you for this. Please do send it to council. Matt Keating is supposed to, I've been reminding him for a while, I did go to Washington, put out a poll for a work session on gas stations. So I expect that tomorrow, I hope so. And when this gas station came up on 7th, of course, people were really concerned. I am too. I live on 9th. So there's a lot of gas stations there. And when you look at that map, you can see that the city is pretty well served. I haven't gotten letters ever saying, gee, I need another gas station closer to me. So I feel that everyone's fuel needs are being met. However, it's private property, and at this point it was zoned. It's okay to have a gas station there. So it wasn't a matter of asking us or getting a permit. I mean, you have to get permits, but they didn't have to have any special consideration to put a gas station there. I've talked to Lisa Arkin and to the mayor about this, and we agree we do not need any more gas stations. Councillor Keating is suggesting a moratorium, which I certainly agree with. And so having the sustainability commission put some light on it is helpful. Thank you.
You can go ahead, Karen, and then Louisa. Oh, you're still muted.
Thanks for your leadership, Art, and to the other committee members who came up with this, and it's really succinct and to the point. I just have one thing to point out, that sustainability is spelled wrong.
It's a really long word.
It's tough. Anything over 6 is, you know.
Was that it, Karen? Okay. I really appreciate this too. I think it's an excellent direction to go in and to bring up the conversation to council. The one thing I would want to frame as well is I'm always thinking in the permaculture mindset of stacking functions. And I think that the conversation around storage of fuels on site really plays into our other conversation around fossil fuel risk bonds. And the fact that a facility that is very close to neighborhoods and would by default be moving and storing large amounts of fossil fuels on site, it also connects to our recommendations that we've previously made
to council and advocacy around that. So I would just encourage this letter to also remind council of those points in the letter to help them see the threads that we're connecting around these concerns and the liability that they raise for the community. Thanks.
Oh, hey, Laura.
I totally agree with you, Louisa. Also, in the interest of time, since we can't really wordsmith like a letter on the spot, would you be okay sending it, and then maybe whoever reads it could just verbally connect the dots between response and gas stations, but it's not written, since we probably don't have time to make that adjustment and still get it out.
Understood.
Thanks, Laura. So it seems like we're all in agreement of it. So do we have a motion to approve this letter?
I would move to approve the letter regarding gas station ban from the commission. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, and I saw Mitra, your hand for second. All in favor, please raise your hand. Ooh, it passes.
We always have such controversial votes in this.
Yeah,
meeting.
right.
It's so like right down the middle and the fighting.
Where's the drama? So next up we have Urban Canopy Committee, and they have a draft letter as well. Mike, is it all right if I pass that off to you?
Sure. Yeah, I'd like to take it. Can you put that letter up on the screen? I want to make sure Matt's awake out there. Anyway, I'll while you're figuring that out, and I know time is always like, they always give us like this much because we talk a lot, but I got to say something before we get into this. I've been doing this kind of work ever since I could drive, and that was a long time. The last meeting that I had with the Urban Canopy Committee was one of the most rewarding meetings to walk away from that I've had in a long time. And I just wanted to thank everybody that sat in on that. It just felt like we've been thinking about this for so long. We really don't even have, we know what we want. And it was just a pleasure to walk away with literally this. There was not one word in this document when we started, and it was just our collective hive mind, and everything that every one of those dots were, at least for me, were just absolutely, that's what we talked about, and let's do this. So anyway, thank you. I want to talk a little bit about where we are now with the Urban Canopy Committee. And basically, we've come to a point where we feel like we have an emergent issue with the middle housing proposal that's before council right now. And it does affect the Urban Canopy, and I'll talk about that in a minute, but I think the thing, whenever you take a whole code like that and tear it apart and change it for something else, there are unintended consequences. There always are. And it's not a bad or a good thing. It's just that's what happens. One thing that we know about the Urban Canopy is that denser houses, less open space is less trees. That's literally just a matter of math. It's not a formula or anything else. That is going to happen. So just with that in mind, and the fact that we have a consultant, we have somebody working on the code, having open, creates I think an opportunity to look at the whole code. And this is the whole tree code that affects residential, commercial. This is a big thing. And what we found with going to all of our city departments, planning, urban forestry, A few enlightened council people were nice enough to sit down with us. And basically everyone in that whole mix said the same thing, is that our tree code right now, before we get real successful with building middle housing and shrinking the parking and the setbacks and everything, before that is less than excellent. I mean, that is the best way that I could say it and be nice. It does not serve our climate goal. In other words, we have a 21% urban coverage right now, and we're looking at a 1% shrinkage a year. So 1% doesn't sound like a lot, just like 1%. When you're talking about trees and you're talking about how many trees we have in our city, it's huge. And so we have this lofty, goal of, being a leader in all of these things. And it's why you got to love Eugene, right? We want to lead the world. We have this, great, never before planned, tried plan for natural gas, for middle housing. And you just see it, it's in us. So the fact that we're doing all that, and we're taking the one single thing that is going to affect climate change more than probably all of these, is our urban canopy shrinking, it makes no sense. And there's no recovery from just education or anything else. It is the code that's keeping us from doing that. And so given that particular fact, and it wasn't a fact until this year, by the way, when we bought the iCanopy software, and we actually switched from data to, and I had questions about the numbers they had before. It was based on an estimate, best they could do, kind of an eyesight thing. They had a grad student's report. The data just wasn't that, like, I can really get my heart behind it. But now we have satellite driven GIS. We know how many trees we are, and we bought 10 years back in the future. I mean, in the past. So we can see that we've been losing canopy consistently for that long. It's no longer like a maybe and oh terrible. This is happening. So given that fact that it's shrinking now, and we've just, bless our hearts, we're doing great things, and I support the middle housing movement probably more than most, but it is going to affect our canopy. And there's just like a whole bunch of things that when you get into it, when you get into code, which I have just recently, and I will tell you that code is it is literally like a different language, and it has layers on layers and layers, and literally you can look at one thing and it means 10 other things somewhere else, and it's kind of, I think, maybe not above our pay grade to suggest changes in the exact code. So what we came up with in our meeting, and again, thanks for everybody and their input, was that we would point out that it's not working, that we're going backwards, and we just kind of point out the facts and go to council and make a recommendation that we support your housing, let's go, but with the caveat that we take our tree code and we take a look at it and change it, we're not going to tell them specifics because they're the boss and they know what's going on, but we're going to tell them with one single goal, is that our code meets our goal. and it actually, you whatever you guys decide, that's more trees in the ground. That's literally like saying, okay, we really weren't kidding. So we either have to change the cap 2.0 or change the code. Those are the two options, or we will never get there. And that's a fact. That's literally not a alarmist or anything. That's just what's going to happen. So, our committee decided that we would come to you folks and ask what you thought about going to council and asking, again, you have to appreciate how big of an ask this is. It literally is taking a whole tree code and starting from scratch, or at least changing enough to where trees, the trees we're losing are replaced in a fashion where we can meet our goal. That's a big ask. That's a lot of money. But what I would hope that, and I think my committee and some of the people I'm talking to in the tree community now are ready to stand up and treat these trees as true assets. In other words, this is really giving us dollars a cents. It's the only asset we can purchase that never depreciates, and really make an investment in it. And I think that if we are Eugene and we're going to do all these great, like, amazing things and ignore our trees, it just doesn't make sense to me. So I'll pass it to discussion, and I hope some other folks on our committee will speak up and talk about this.
Thank you, Mike. I just want to point out that we are a bit behind schedule, so we might go over about 10 minutes past our objective ending of the meeting. With that being said, I do see Jan's hand was up first.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to what Mike said. It is a big ask, but on the other hand, we're hoping that, given that there will be people working on code amendments related to the middle housing effort, that there would already be some consultant or staffing devoted to it, and hopefully it isn't, creating something from new, but just acknowledging that this is something that will be affected and needs to also be addressed. That's all.
Yeah, I'll go quickly. Mike, is it okay to drop into the group chat the link to the new iCanopy software? I wasn't sure if that was quite public. It is very cool. The points that Mike made, I obviously agree with. I was on the committee who wrote this letter. What we noted is basically that they cut and paste the existing tree removal code, right? There's no code that says like how many trees in what place. It's how do you legally cut down a tree on private property? And that's really what's at issue. The city is doing an excellent job, but of course they actually only control less than 25% of the canopy in the city, and the rest is on private property. And so what we're trying to help understand is that the removal code is extraordinarily generous. Basically, if you're under 20,000 square feet on a lot, which is almost half an acre, you can kind of do whatever you want. And it does, obviously cutting down trees is expensive. Most people appreciate their trees. There's no, easy reason why people would want to do that, but especially for development, there is a motivation to clear a lot utterly when you're doing a development. And the current code has very little protections for that, insufficient protections for that. They also have, in the new draft version of the code, the identification language in there about significant trees, but they don't define what a significant tree is. And so there's real gaps that I really think council would want to see and understand. And so that's why we tried to pull this letter together. And the urgency of this is around the timing of that review. And of course, middle housing is a gigantic topic. This is going to be peanuts in the bigger conversation. And so I would just really ask Councilor Semple your thoughts on how best to have that conversation with council in the light of the work being done by Cameron McCarthy and the other code writers, to not have this get lost in the shuffle.
Well, most people know that I'm a real tree lover, I don't even have to have a date to hug one. So this is really important to me. And as I've said, I'm really grateful to the committee that looked into this. Now, my understanding as far as the middle housing code is going, the standards in the middle housing code are the same as what we have now for RR1 or single family lots. And so same, both probably need some major looking at and revision. But I pretty much can guarantee you this isn't going to happen in time for this middle housing code, which we have to approve by May 31st for it to be active by June 30th, or the state's going to tell us what to do. And we're like, no, you can't tell us what to do. Some of us want to do nothing. Some of us want to do a lot, but we're all like, no, we want to do our own thing. So I'd love to have this be part of it and use the missing middle as motivation to get this going, but there's not enough time. And I agree that missing middle is part of the problem, because one of the ideas is that you could cover 75% of the lot, and that doesn't leave a lot of room for trees, which is a big concern of mine. It would only be where it was lower income. It would sort of be motivation, incentive to put lower cost housing in. You wouldn't have to have parking, and you could cover more of the lot. So, you know, we need to live closer together, but I'm a big advocate for us having some space for our dogs to run around and to have trees. And as we all know, we need trees on private land, and the city can only do the city land. And I think Matt can speak to this. We are redoing our whole forestry plan that hadn't been done for 27 years or something. And I think that's going to help a lot. So this is great work. I want us to keep going. Definitely send it to council, but I don't want you to get your hopes up that we can do this and, you know, we get back in the beginning of April and we're week into April and we've only got to the end of May. I hope that helps and doesn't discourage you, because there's no reason to be discouraged. We're working, and we need you, and we're all working. And this to me is a separate issue, because I wanted to count for all kinds of housing, not just R1 or just missing middle.
Thank you. I just want to do another time check. It's almost 7, so if we could do our best to keep comments brief. I think I saw Mike, I saw your hand, but I'm going to call on Art since he hasn't spoken yet.
It seems the problem existed before the middle housing issue, right? So it's not just that. I mean, I think we should send in your letter to raise those issues in that context. But I think, you know, there is an urban forester, and I'm sure you've been talking with him, and then there must be some people that are up on this, you know, that even have some ideas about what should be done. So I urge the committee to keep at that and try to get some recommendations with the help of the urban forestry staff to you know, come back to us sometime in the near future with some ideas about how that general code could be changed. Good luck, Mike.
Is there anybody else that's on the queue? So Emily, what our idea was generally not to have them rewrite the code by June, whatever the deadline is to actually just, we have forever and a day to rewrite the code. It doesn't, we can, but what we would ask is that this be a true voted amendment, that it does happen within a certain period of time. It doesn't need to be, I mean, it's taken 20 years for this monstrosity to be, you know, literally we haven't changed it in 23 years. So it's taken a while to get to where we are. So we're not unrealistic in that we would want it like immediately. We're realistic. We want to be good partners, but what do you think about that?
I don't think we're going to get any amendments onto this missing middle about trees. And if I thought we could do it, I would be out there cheerleading. It's really controversial and a little bit volatile. And I would like to put all kinds of things there, but trees would be my number one. But I don't think that this is the place. But I think we should be immediately, asking for the next step. Matt, can you make any comments about what the city's doing for our plans for our city forestry and anything to do with this missing middle problem?
Thanks, Councillor Semple. I'm not going to be an expert on how the missing middle code kind of intersects, so I'll say that right out of the gate. But a lot of what I noticed when I looked at your letter is a lot of it is spread over a lot of different code sections and documents. So for instance, the tree preservation is in chapter 6. Chapter 6 is not open as part of missing middle. So that's a different code conversation. We also reference to, the conflict, which is real, that we have between street trees and stormwater facilities in the right of way, like, infiltration planners and other, that really is going to get handled through an update of our stormwater management manual. So there are other places that are opportunities to sort through some of these problems. And I think, I know Chair and Vice Chair talked to me about an urban forestry presentation, which, depending on what the desire of the commission was, we could try to schedule probably early next fiscal year, where we could come, and probably not just an urban forester, because honestly, they're not always the code experts, but an urban forester and maybe someone from planning and development to come in and talk to you about what options are.
Hey, Dennis, I see your hand, and then maybe after that we can vote.
Yeah, I just want to say that, thank you, Councillor, for the sense that knowing that this might not happen as part of the middle review, but the key phrase we knew was in that letter was asking for the code around tree preservation, and those varieties of bullet points be revisited. And so that, given that, I'd like to move approval of the letter.
Thanks, Dennis. I had one edit I saw on it. It's just like one tiny thing. City of Eugene, the city is not capitalized in it. In the second paragraph. So with that little edit, Dennis, you still want a motion? Okay, sounds good. A second, Mike. Oh, Laura. Oh. Right, everyone raise their hand. Okay, all in favor, please raise your hand. All right, thank you. So it passes. So we'll go ahead and send that. Laura did want to ask the commission for some help with, I think it was called the Green Housing Project. I'll just pass it to Laura to.
Yeah, so I'm organizing with 350 Eugene a green home tour. It's a virtual tour of homes, people practicing climate-friendly practices of a variety of things. It's as well as neighbor to neighbor sharing about what people are doing in their homes and landscapes. And I'm asking, as a not a sustainability commissioner, just as a community member, for endorsement of the event. And it's not financial. It would just be to have the logo on the website about it, and if people would share it. It's a free event. It's going to be English, Spanish, bilingual. We're going to record videos of the homes, and that will be kept on a website so people can come and see that later on, and resources about different climate-friendly practices people can do in Eugene, with like lists to contractors like people used, and just kind of the nitty-gritty that people need to know about if they want to do a project. So the request is for endorsement, which is not a financial commitment. All right.
Yeah, I move that we endorse this project. It sounds excellent, especially Laura's just discussion and description of that. It sounds like it's offering a lot to the community. So I would support it and think we should go ahead and do that. I would move.
Luisa, it looks like, is that a second or a comment?
I just wanted to clarify that if we were to name specific contractors who did the work, that we would not be specifically endorsing particular contractors. I think that would cross some sort of line. And so just to name the contractors who did a work, for example, in that house, I just wanted to double check the rules around that for fairness as a public body. Thanks.
Yeah, it would be if a site put in like a heat pump, for example, they would say who put in their heat pump. Not, we wouldn't say like, this is who can put in your heat pump. It would just be like connected directly to the home if they use particular contractors.
Oh, one other question. How many homes are you trying to have?
7-ish.
Jan, your hands up.
I would like to ask about the other 350 event when we're done voting on this one. That's what hands up.
Sounds good. So Art moved Art, is there a second?
Sure.
All right, Jan, all in favor, please raise your hand. All right, it passes. Thank you, Laura, for bringing that up. And now Jan, you had something about.
Yeah, so did others get a renewed application for the 350 town hall? Because it's not in my packet, not the latest one. It sounded like somebody thought they saw it, but so it is in April. So can we go ahead and discuss that based on our previous approval, and just say we want to forward that again without additional paperwork right now? Apparently it is somewhere. They said they turned it in, so.
Yeah, we have a motion.
There was a second email sent out that said updated second packet.
Yeah, that's the one I think I have open, but I don't.
And if you scroll down, it's right there. It's below the 3.
Maybe I opened the wrong one then, because it's not in mine.
I think, Karen, you're mistaking the one I did. There's two different things we're talking about. Mine got in there.
Because there's one below that about, is 350 funding your event? I guess so.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, sorry. I still want to leave my hand up though for the future.
Okay, well then I'd like to just make a motion that we approve the extended, the 350 sponsored town hall at the new date in April.
Second.
That was Laura, second. All in favor, please raise your hand.
Thank you.
Okay, who passes? Thanks, Jan, for bringing that back up. And then Karen.
Okay. So do you have a second then I could talk about the large events thing? So we submitted a letter a couple weeks ago to the city council to remind them of our proposal on large events. And that was followed up by, I went and gave public comment at the city council. Louisa also gave public at the city council meeting last week too. It was phenomenal. There was over 40 people commenting on stuff. So in the meantime, number one, I prematurely sent you a link in the chat that was really exciting. You scroll down and you'll see this article from Bring Recycling has been asked by the World Championships to help out with sustainability, and there's a lot of really incredible things on there. So it's definitely a gold standard. ISO 14000, locally sourced stuff, reduced waste, carbon offsets, carbon reduction. It's a dream. So with that, first of all, I see this as a one-off. It's this big eyes on the world is watching us kind of a thing, and then we kind of go back to our status quo. So what I'm wondering is Councilor Semple, what's the path forward on this? I mean, does everything like this need to have a work session? Obviously, it's not on the work session list, and time is ticking away. I don't know what the process is, and it's just, I mean, it's time for them to pass something like this. And then again, somebody from Krupp last night went and presented again to the city council on this issue.
Excellent job. You did a great job on that. On our tentative agenda at the end, it lists the work sessions that we've approved in polls and when they're scheduled, and large event waste is on the list with a TBD after it. So the thought that we would get anything done before the large events start in the beginning of April and go through the end of July, I don't see how it can happen. And I bring that up constantly to the mayor and manager who make the agenda, but I'm not getting anywhere with it. I don't think that it's been, you know, abandoned, but it's not at the top of the pile.
Does everything have to get a work? Does everything have to get a work session? You know, as we're talking about all these things, urban canopy, air quality, these EV stations, does everything have to have a work session in order to pass an ordinance? You know, you can't just bring an ordinance up.
An ordinance has to go to a public hearing. So we have to talk about it. It has to go to a public hearing. We talk about it again and vote if it goes really smoothly. So it's not like I can just say, hey, I move to make this ordinance. Even if everybody said yes, it still has to go to a public hearing. If it's a code change, it's just right. Some things can be done by admin order and Sarah can just do it. And I can't tell you which is which at the moment.
It's just
add a little bit of detail that quickly. An admin order is rules that implement code. So the code would need to be in place first.
And that means we would need a work session. And unless, you know, we just make a motion for it, that means a poll. And that means getting the poll out there in then 2 weeks, which is why I want Councillor Keating to get that gas station poll out there. And I keep telling him, if he doesn't do it, I'm gonna. And councillors seem to be in this, you know, it's my work session poll, you know, I am the best. So I'm offering him this opportunity.
It's just very disheartening because I've been on this commission almost 2 years and I have not seen, I mean, our work gets applauded and we make recommendations and, you know, something like this large event things, we've tried every way to just bring it up as a low hanging fruit. Yes, Bring is doing this and I'm really excited about that. But like I said, it's a one-off. It's like, oh, yay, they did this stuff. And then we're back to status quo. So it's just really, really discouraging to see all this work and all the effort to comment on it too, you know, that the counselors comment on it. You work on this, you have work sessions, and it would be really great to see some response or some movement. I understand that there are a million things on the council's plate. And even if we can't get an ordinance on that, I don't know how the council could encourage this, but I don't know. It's just, I appreciate your work and I know you've been bringing it up with the mayor and I know you've got a work session on it. And I'm glad that the world championships will at least model this. The UN just passed a resolution on single-use plastic and Starbucks is now moving towards eliminating all the single. So I see that our collective conscience is getting out there in the world and some of these things are happening, but thanks for your work, Councillor Semple. And I don't know, I don't see what else we can do on some of this stuff, but anyway, thank you. Oops, lower hand.
Okay, so we are over time and we have one last item for Councillor Semple to give us updates. Do you feel like you could do that?
I can do it really fast because we already talked about everything. Matt gave the tentative agenda and the gas poll has been talked about and waste management and the missing middle trees, which were on my list while we talked about everything. So we can adjourn.
That was quick.
That was the fastest, yeah. Thank you, everyone. This meeting, I feel like we got a lot done in this meeting, so that was really great. And thank you for bearing with us. Only 10 minutes over, so.
Which you advertised, so hey.
I know, I'm not really good at keeping time, but I feel pretty happy about that.
When's the next meeting? April
20th.
20th, okay.
Yeah, it's going on by.
Thanks everybody for your work.
Thank you to this whole commission. You don't get enough thanks and I know how very hard you work, especially all of our committees. So heartfelt thanks and happy spring.
Happy spring. Before we adjourn, I just want on the record, Louisa Simpson tree plother canopy software, just so anyone at home wants to look that up. And with that, meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone. See you April 20th.
Bye.
Thanks for hosting that. Good night.
Thank you.